Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Nasāmi. This is the first time I have visited your Buddhist center here. So I'm very happy to see a great gathering of people who are very full this evening. Shows a lot of interest. Also to see a lot of younger people who are interested in Dhamma. The world today desperately needs people to take interest in the noble truths, truth of the Buddha's teachings. I notice the Buddha image that you have is the Dhammacakka Buddha image. The Buddha is teaching the first discourse, which is the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. The first teachings that the Buddha gave to the 5 ascetics after his enlightenment. He enjoyed the bliss of enlightenment for 7 weeks in Bodhigaya, and then travelled a long distance to Saranath, where he met up with his old disciples. And at first they were reluctant to receive the Buddha. They thought he had taken a comfortable path rather than tormenting himself through physical austerity. But then the Buddha gave them instructions, and in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta he talked about the 4 noble truths. And there's a very interesting, if you look at the Buddha image, the Buddha image has its hands like this, and then its hand like that, fingers like this. And that is interesting symbolism, because the Buddha is talking about the 4 noble truths. What's the first noble truth? Suffering. Suffering is a fundamental thing that unifies us in this world. So when I came in the door, the first thing I saw was a skeleton. The skeleton represents the first noble truth of everyone here. Even the monks, where whatever nationality, whatever society, however successful, wealthy or unsuccessful you are, whatever happens in life, we have the same surname. Yes, skeleton. Yes, or end up as a skeleton. That impermanence, because things are all things are impermanent and fade away, eventually disappear, eventually disintegrate and break up. Nothing is ever stable in the macro world or in the micro world, in the external world or in the internal world. That noble truth is the cause of suffering. And that is that there is suffering. And the second noble truth is the cause. The cause is through craving. 3 types of craving. Cravings for sensual pleasures, which means pleasure of the sense organs of the body, wanting to see beautiful things, hear pleasant sounds, only praise, never blame, wanting to taste delicious things, to smell fragrant things, never to have to smell or come in contact anything unpleasant, and then have contact, physical contact with what is comfortable and pleasurable and desirable. That craving, craving for sensual pleasures, is what human existence is often driven looking for. The craving to get what we want, and then the craving to avoid what we dislike. So the craving to become, the craving to escape from displeasure and those things we don't like. Bhava tanha and vipabhava tanha in Pali. So we have those cravings. So that forms a circle. There's the first noble truth, suffering, its cause, forms a circle. What's that circle? Circle of rebirth. So that's why the Buddha image in here, the artist has very beautifully symbolized the circle of existence. When there's the Buddha's teachings of suffering and there's craving, it continues in a circle. We're reborn, driven by the fuel of craving, seeking out future desires, future life, future satisfaction, future pleasure. That causes a circle. Then there is an escape, which is the second hand. There's one truth, the truth of Nibbana. That one truth, the liberation, that's the one way out of this circle of suffering. That's why it's held, the finger is held up like this. And how do we escape to Nibbana? Through the last noble truth, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Dhamma Chakra. It's a circle. Right view, yes. Right thoughts, right speech, your right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And when we say right, what we mean is it's the perfection of those, that it is wholesome, it is beneficial, and it's right in the sense that it leads to liberation. Because we can also have, wrong concentration, for example, where we become, very concentrated on being successful or wealthy. That's a form of concentration. We keep our attention and focus on that desire, but this is the desire to escape from suffering, to seek release, liberation. So it's very interesting that a lot of the early artwork of Buddha images, they use the teachings of the Buddha and symbolize them. And so that's why sometimes when we see a Buddha image, it represents the serene one, the blissful one, the awakened one, and the peaceful one. So this is, brings a sense of well-being and calmness, and that's why, physically it looks very appealing, beautiful, but serene and calming as well. So that's just something to point out to you, that when you see that symbolism, reflect on it, because sometimes we come and we offer candles, flowers, and incense, and our parents teach us to bow down to a Buddha image. But what are we bowing down to the Buddha image for? It's to actually remind us, this is a symbol of the Buddha teaching the Four Noble Truths. Yes. I should be aspiring to understand, to comprehend, develop knowledge about the Four Noble Truths in how the Buddha taught them. How do I develop an understanding of them? How do I practice to overcome the causes for suffering? And how I cultivate those ways of release from suffering, that it will lead to liberation and freedom. So that is why we're here, is to grow in our understanding of the teachings, to grow in our kind of way of practice. When you go to a monastery of the forest meditation tradition in Thailand, when I first went there, you'll find that there's certain words that are very common in the vocabulary of the teachers. And one of the words that you hear all the time is patibat, which means to practice the Buddha's teachings. Because traditionally, sometimes over time, the Buddha's teachings have come this symbolism of what is noble and good outside of people's daily lives. So they'll have a Buddha image, have a shrine in the house, they'll offer up candles, flowers, incense and water, but they don't actually practice those particular teachings apart from offering those devotions to the shrine. So in the forest meditation tradition, it's not so much the worshipping of the Buddha in the formal sense of offering candles, flowers and incense. That's definitely there, but it's the whole application of those teachings in your daily life. How do I apply the Buddha's teachings so I become a more wiser, more compassionate, more skillful, more alert, more peaceful human being, and how do I overcome the greed, hate and delusion in my own mind? How do I train myself? How do I develop myself to become someone who's released from suffering? And Ajahn Chah, who you have a photograph of here, you know Ajahn Chah, I'm sure, through people's teachings and instructions. He was a very skilled and wise teacher and very pragmatic. So when you would come to him and you would have a problem or an issue, some monks, which people would often like, would give you a medallion, a Buddhist image, sprinkle some holy water on you, or give you some chanting to bless you. Ajahn Chah wasn't so much like that. If you came to him and said you had a problem, an issue, he would ask you, what do you want, or what do you want to get rid of? If you figure that out, you give up your wants, your desires to get something, or give up your desire to get rid of something, then you're giving up the cause of suffering, craving. When you abandon that, then there'll be the release of craving. Therefore, there'll be the ending of the cause of suffering. Suffering will be overcome, and you're at peace. So that's a very pragmatic skill. It's like that symbolism of, if you want to feed somebody, they say, you teach them how to garden, or you can give them a banana, or give them a piece of fruit. Often the analogy is if you want to feed somebody, you can give them a fish or you can teach them how to fish, but that's not a good Buddhist analogy, so I won't use that one. So Ajahn Chah was definitely the one who would, instead of teaching you, I'll give you a banana to feed your hunger, he would teach you how to grow bananas. Yes, and that's a more traditional Buddhist analogy, and this is very important because he's not teaching you how to resolve this particular issue for today. He's teaching you the methodology for dealing with issues now and in the future, to actually reflect, if I'm not happy, is it because of this person, that person, the society, other people, this or that, the government, politicians, whatever, or is it coming from my own desires? And if we see, excuse me, if we see it's coming from our own desires, then we can do something about it by changing those desires. So this is an important skill which you should take on board as a way of practicing Dhamma Patipatha. This is how I become aware of myself. But firstly, in our practice, we have to develop sense of self-awareness. We actually have to know our feelings, our moods, our emotions, and whether we're suffering or not suffering. Sometimes we don't even see it. we don't even realize that we're caught on something. Now, the way to develop that awareness is what we're developing mindfulness. This mindful attention to the present moment, to the body, to feelings, to thoughts, to dhammas, to citta. So we have to know what's actually happening, to be aware of ourselves. And mindfulness in Buddhism, or sati, is the ability to recall or recollect. But mindfulness and sati actually has other qualities which I'd like to talk about a bit tonight, because often they're not described by monks. Their emphasis is on the ability to recall. But mindfulness has broader aspects than just recalling. And mindfulness, in the way the Buddha used it, means to not only recall, but to sustain the attention on what is wholesome and good. Sustain the attention on the object that you're going to cultivate. For example, if you want to be mindful of what you're doing, for example, you're walking, then you have to not only recall that you're in the process of walking and not, thinking or speculating about what you'll be doing once you get there. You're in the process of being mindful of each step. You also have to sustain attention on each step. So you just can't be aware of, I'm walking, and then forget about it. It's, I'm walking, come back to the present moment, I'm walking. So you're mindful of each step continuously. So it is sustained attention and then continuous attention. So it's sustained and continuous. And when we have sustained and continuous attention on a wholesome thing, something which is beneficial to ourselves and beneficial to others, then that brings up the sense of ease and peace in the mind. So if we sustain our attention, for example, on our breathing, we bring the breath to mind, that this in-breath is so precious to us that if we don't breathe in, we'll pass away. We'll end up like the skeleton. If we don't breathe out, we'll end up like the skeleton. This breath that you're having right now is the most important breath in your life, right now. This exhalation is the most important exhalation, and it has immense value. You see, even the most wealthiest person, if you said you're not going to breathe out anymore, or you're not going to breathe anymore, you'll pass away. They're willing to sacrifice their wealth for life. They're willing to pay and give up so they sustain life. Our life is so valuable. And so when we give that attention to something of extreme value and actually start to see it, because we just breathe in and breathe out, and so it becomes so normal that we forget the importance of the breath, isn't it? We forget it, it's just normal. And we think about it as just normal. But when we really stop and consider, this is one breath is our most important breath. And when we start to give interest to this one breath, it becomes valuable. Our attention goes to it. The Buddha said that human beings, if they give interest in something, then the mind stays on it. So you actually have to be interested in your breathing. Interested in this one breath going in and one breath going out, rather than seeing it as just a normal process. What's it feel like? How long is it? How short, how rough, how coarse is the breath? Is it a gentle breath? Is it a coarse breath? You're just trying to know, not trying to adjust it, but just to put interest into the feeling of the breath. Where does the breath begin? How long is it? Where does it stop? What's the space between the in-breath and the exhalation? Where does the exhalation begin? And where does it end? And so we're feeling the whole process, but also then sustaining that to the next breath. So we need to sustain the attention on the in-breathing and the out-breathing. So there is continuous attention on the in-breathing and the out-breathing. And this is important because we find that actually in our daily lives we're not that very mindful, and we're not very good at sustaining attention, especially I think in modern life. I'll give you examples. How often have you thought, I'll go to the back of the house and I need to get something, so for example a book, and you get up and you walk past your mobile phone and you think, I'll just check my messages or my email or something like that, and then you start looking on your mobile phone and you see that this message has come in, and I'll just check my photos, who's seen I don't know, Instagram or whatever, and then you start getting, maybe I'll check the news or something like that, and then maybe I need to contact that person, so you've got distracted by the phone, which can distract a lot of people for a long period of time. Then you put the phone down, I've got to go and get the book, and then you walk past the television, the news is on, that looks important, I'll watch that for a while, and then, I need to go get the book, and then you walk past the fridge, I'm a bit peckish now, and then so you go and open the fridge and just go and eat, and by the time you finish, you've actually forgotten what you're actually going for. You get to the back of the house and why am I here? Yes, right. You've sort of forgotten the original purpose of getting up and walking, and that actually happens a lot in our lives. And so we can actually, and we should train ourselves. And in the forest monasteries, the Kulba Ajahns, the great teachers, will actually get us to do this. That if we're determined to do something, but then we're distracted by minor things, not important things like the house is on fire or things like that, we must continue to fulfill our original aim and purpose before doing the other things. So if you're determined to go and get the book, you walk to the book, you see the mobile phone, no, I'm going for the book. I'll get the book. You see the television, no. Kitchens, the fridge, no. Get the book, bring back, you take the information you needed from the book, then I can do these other things. If you learn to do that rather than the opposite of just zigzagging by distraction, you won't. If you zigzag through distraction, you won't fulfill your purposes and aims and goals. And in life, you'll end up doing that as well. So you may have, an aim and a goal, an ultimate aim and a goal. I want to sort of earn money to buy an apartment or a house. But then you'll find you're distracted by all these other things in life, and you won't fulfill those ultimate aims. So it's learning that mindfulness, what we call mindfulness, is not just a minor thing, a minor form of mental training. It's actually a very important part of mental stability, mental strength, mental commitment, the sustaining of the mind on an object, to remember that object, see the importance and interest in that object, keep the mind on that object, on that goal, on that purpose, and sustain it continuously. And then you'll see that leads to what we call concentration. The mind becomes concentrated on that wholesome object. And so we bring that, for example, in meditation, we bring that to the breath, for example. This is just one example. You can bring it to anything. We focus on the in-breathing and the out-breathing, sustain our attention, remind us. If the thought saying, maybe I should do metta meditation, no, that's the mobile phone. Yes. Coming to distract us. Come back. I'll just watch this breath. interested in this breath, knowing this one breath, focusing on that, sustaining it on that, until one can maintain that consistency of mind on that one object. And then you'll start to see, with interest, the details of that object. It's a bit, I like to give the example of like holding up, say, a bottle of water or a glass. And if I get you to all look at this bottle of water, I'll try and hold it still. But even if I don't, it doesn't matter, because what we're trying to do is see the truth of this bottle of water. And then I want you to, in your own mind, to describe what you actually see. And often when I do this, people say, well, it's a bottle, it's a certain size, and it's full, it's got a cap on it. And I say, no, look at it. Look at it even longer. Oh, and now I see the label, and maybe if I turn it around, oh, I see it's actually Ice Mountain bottled water, pure drinking water, and then I see that, it's a particular shape, it's got a form, it's got a wave on the outside of the bottle. I can see it's almost full to the brim. I can see the top of the water moving. I can see, now look at it closer. Oh, I can see into the water. Oh, I can see the light shining through the water. I can see reflections in the water. Oh, that's very interesting. I can see actually people, and I look through it, magnified through this bottle. The longer I look at the detail with interest, then the more I can see. Initially people just, it's a bottle of water. That's just superficial. We're looking into the detail, the refineness, every aspect of this bottle of water, trying to look through it to understand it. And so too, mindfulness is that fullness of mind, to apply that mind, its attention to, for example, the breathing, anapanasati, the breathing going in and the breathing going out. What's the beginning of the breath? How's the breath feel? Is it long? Is it coarse? Is it sensitive? Is it sharp? Or is it relaxed? To know all the qualities of the breath, to look into it with interest. What's the nature of the breathing? Is there kind of tension? Am I feeling the breath at the tip of the nose, or at the nostril, or in the throat, or in the chest, or in the abdomen? Where do you know you're breathing? And that's where you place your attention. It doesn't matter really physically. The Buddha doesn't say in the suttas, you have to know you're breathing at the tip of the nose. He doesn't say you have to know it at the chest. It doesn't matter where you know it. It matters that you know it. That you know it now. That you know it now. That you know it now. It's like hitting a nail on the head. You have to focus on the head of the nail, not on the head of the hammer. Yes? Head of the nail, you focus on the head of the nail and you strike that, holding the hammer firmly, striking it continuously. Then it will sink into that block of wood. So too, when we focus on the breath continuously sustained over a period of time, therefore the concentration will penetrate into being right samadhi, right concentration. So this is how we do this, by taking a deep interest in the details, not the superficiality of the breath, the details of the breath, and trying to understand it. And the thing is just knowing. So often people ask, how much effort do I have to put in to know the breath? And if you're getting tense, then you're putting in too much effort. If you're getting a headache, then you're putting out too much effort. Definitely putting out too much. If you're having tension in the stomach or tightness in the shoulders, then you need to relax. It's a way of just knowing the breath. So it's like trying to hold some water in your hand. It's almost like you have to just sort of juggle it. You can't squeeze the water, or else it'll sort of go out through your fingers. You actually just have to hold it there and know it, that it's stable and it's cupped in your hand. If you kind of spill it too much one way or the other, tip it too much one way or the other, it'll fall out of your hand. Some people try to catch the breath and know the breath with a clenched fist. The analogy that the Ajahns give is, if you've got a baby chicken or a baby duckling and you are asked to pick it up, catch it, if you grab it too hard, then you'll crush the duckling. If you don't kind of grab it firmly enough, the duckling will get away. So you have to find the right tension, how much pressure to actually hold that breath so that you can sustain your attention on it but not squeeze it. So you're forcing the mind with desire to hold the breath. And the ability to just know the breath is the right attention. Know the breath now. Know the breath now. Now. It's in time, what we call temporal attention. You're knowing it in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. It's not in a location. It's not so much where you're knowing it at this point, at the nostril or wherever. It's knowing it in time, this moment in time. And as you keep your attention in time, then you'll find that you'll be able to sustain the mindfulness with clarity and then with ease. And the other qualities that we need to reflect on when we look at the Buddha image is that he is, we say, the one who knows, the blissful one, the serene one. Yes? So not only does he know, and he's serene, he's blissful as well. That's important to remember. That's what represents the Buddha. When we're practicing meditation, we have to know the object that we're putting attention. The purpose is to know the breath, to know what's happening, know that we're breathing in, know that we're breathing out. It's also that we're awakened and aware of the breath, that we're not just sort of vague and confused about it. We're actually aware of the breath, but also we have a blissful attitude towards the breath. And often people forget this final quality, to have this blissful, rapturous, joyous association of recalling the breath to mind. So it's not this hard, intense forcing of the mind on the breath. It's almost this joyous that this breath, you see it with enthusiasm and joy, that this is the thing that gives life. It is pleasurable to know that and experience that. It's a delight. And the blissful experience, that leads the mind to peace. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a tickle in the throat these days. And that leads to mind to have this joyous interest in the breath and this sense of ease and well-being. So when the mind has a joyous interest, then endorphins are released in the body. That's a biological effect. It reduces pain in the body when endorphins are released. That's a hormone which is just natural. And also then, so you find that you're not sitting with great discomfort. There's a sense of relaxation in the body, and then it's easier to keep the attention on a joyous, blissful object for a long period of time. So this is a bit of kind of background on how to develop mindful attention, and that will lead to right concentration. And right concentration, then it continues on, and we'll be able to develop the Noble Eightfold Path. But this mindful awareness is extremely important. When you go to the monasteries, and the Ajahns are always talking about mindfulness, being aware. And it's not just in formal meditation. It's being aware of everything in daily life. So Ajahn Chah, when you'd go and see him, he said, I don't have to ask you how your meditation is going. He said, I'll give you a spittoon or a glass, and I'll say, go and wash it. And he would watch how we received it. He would watch how we carried it, how we walked, how we put it down, whether we washed that glass, kind of quietly, or we cracked that glass against the counter, or made a mess. He'd watch where we threw things out. He'd watch whether we dried that glass, how we brought it back, and how we placed it down again. And he would then know, by just seeing how we did a very perfunctory sort of thing, washing the glass, how well our mindfulness and concentration was. If he saw that we were, slamming our feet down, making a banging mess, not tidying up after we've finished washing the glass, we come back with a cracked glass, a broken glass, and then sort of put it down with a big crack and a big plonk, then he'd know that we're still pretty rough around the corners and needed a lot more training. And so those external things reflect just how much mindfulness and awareness is there. So we would use the externals as a way of training mindfulness. For example, very simple things like taking a broom and sweeping the leaves. You can often, when people come to the monastery, you can often tell how much mindfulness they have. Just the way they hold the broom, how they sweep the leaves, whether they've swept the leaves, all the leaves, or they've left leaves behind, whether they, how much pressure they're putting on when they sweep the leaves, whether they're not putting enough pressure. All those things are a way that demonstrate how much mindful awareness that person has. And when we would use those sort of things, just those simple things like how we walk, how we would sweep, that became part of the training. Ajahn Chah was brilliant. He would be sitting in his hut, and often he wouldn't have any lights on, and there wasn't any electricity in those days. He wouldn't even light a candle. He'd be sitting in the dark, and a monk would walk up from behind in the dark through the forest, and you'd hear that, we used to use these flip-flops, yes, walking, or sometimes monks didn't have any, and they'd walk barefoot. He could tell, there's 70 monks in the monastery, he could tell who was walking up behind him by the sound of the flip-flops. He knew just about every monk, their style of a way of walking. And that was amazing. He said, this monk's coming. And people thought he had psychic powers. And I said, Lompo, how did you know? Oh, Lompo, that's amazing. And he said, listen to his feet. And we wouldn't even hear, you hear pop, 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 or someone. You'd hear it, and then you start to notice, oh, this monk and the mindful monks, it's very interesting. You hear the rhythm of the flip-flops on their feet, and it's like almost music. It's pop, 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 pop. It's just so calm. And then other monks or angry monks, and you'd hear that. And then you would walk, and you'd be walking through the forest, and you start to hear yourself think, oh yeah, I'm putting my heels down. I'm walking maybe too hard. The way you'd start to discover the way you're walking, and I found that very interesting. I realized that I'd been trained in the West wearing shoes, and how if you wear shoes, you walk very differently from, say, the villagers and the village men who would often walk with flip-flops or barefoot in the fields. They walked with a very even foot, whereas people who wear shoes, they tend to put the heels down quite hardly because the heel is very, very high, and that makes a very loud noise, and it's very jarring. And so then you bring this awareness to the body of how you're walking. It's actually not a natural gait. Now that you're not wearing shoes, you need to adjust. So you're walking more relaxed. And then you be aware of when you're walking through a forest, coming up to the meditation hall when monks are meditating, then you try and walk very quietly, very peacefully. And the trick was to kind of come to Ajahn Chah's hut without him knowing that it was you there. Yes? Some monks would take their flip-flops off and sort of sneak up. Yes? Because, sometimes he'd call out your name even before you got there, He would know that you're coming up and he'd call out. There was a sort of this sense of detail and awareness he had around just the people and the things around him all the time. And on many, many levels. But the detail of mindfulness and attention that we just didn't notice as sort of untrained minds. We'd come to him wanting to learn, and he would point out the way you are sort of carrying something, or the way you are even walking. There was a lot of tension in the way you were sitting, and he would just point out, just relax the shoulders. For example, I give you this as an example. This is you can test this out yourself when you sit meditation. Do you push the tongue up against the palate of the roof of the mouth? If you do, notice that and relax, because you're trying too hard in your meditation. You're sitting there, got your tongue pushed up, and you're putting too much effort. And those are sort of these little things, almost kind of insignificant, but significant really, that you start to pick up in terms of this mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings and tensions and things that are happening in the body, which reflect the mind. If you notice you're getting tense, is it because you've got kind of resentment or negativity in the mind, for example? You can pick that up. Or are you getting stressed over something? You can feel that association. So mindfulness is this whole learning process of the body and mind, the external world, the internal world. And mindfulness always has to be associated with another quality which we call sampajanya, which means circumspection. So that when we're aware of what's going on in the body and feelings and the mind, the citta and dhammas, but also we have the ability to assess the importance of that's happening and what to do with that. Is that associated with what is wholesome and good and beneficial, or is that something that I should give up? So, for example, we can be mindful, for example, that we're getting stressed and tense in the body. That's a thing, if we're aware of those feelings. Then we have to assess, is that beneficial to me? No, it's not beneficial to me. Well, what are the methodologies I need to use to relax? And then sometimes you need to have the skillful means to say, let go, just accept whatever happens. And then when you let go, then you have to have that circumspection. Well, how am I feeling now? Oh yes, the tension's gone. Now there's a sense of ease. But then if they get too relaxed, I'm falling asleep now. Now I need to be circumspect. I need to be more alert and put more energy. So this circumspection is the assessment of the mind with wisdom. Is this beneficial for the path, the liberation? Is this beneficial for putting down defilements? Is this connected with the Buddha's teachings? And should I encourage that quality or discourage that quality of mind? And so knowing that keeps us, the circumspection is what keeps us on the right path to liberation. Circumspection is always in the terms of the context of, is this connected to dukkha, its cause, its release, and the path to its release? So that mindful circumspection, it will assess in those terms of those four qualities of the Noble Truths, and that we use it as a skillful means, and so it's working out what is the right thing to do. And just to give you a coarse example, for example, you're at home, someone rings you up, you hear your mobile phone go off because you're familiar with that sound, that you know it's your mobile phone, not somebody else's in the household. You pick that up, and this is your mindful that this is your mobile phone going off. That's mindfulness. Remember it. That's your sound, the sound of your mobile phone. You pick it up, and you say hello, and you hear the sound of a voice. That sound of a voice is acknowledged, and then you're mindful and using kind of memory. Association, who's that speaking to me? You remember that's your cousin or your friend. And then they say, would you like to go shopping today? And And then you actually have to be mindful and circumspect. Do I have money? Yes. Do I have the time? Do I want to go shopping? Do I need to go shopping? Yes. And is it going to be beneficial to go shopping today? Is my husband going to be upset that I went shopping today? Yes. Or my wife? Yes. And so then we can make that circumspection. We decide, actually, it's not convenient. I don't have the time, or it's not useful for me to go today. So we say, oh, sorry, I'm not convenient today. And then we place it down. Then someone else rings up and they say, hello, remember their name, recall that voice, that's memory, that's mindfulness. And they say, do you want to come to the Buddhist Center tonight because the monks are going to give a talk? Oh, yes. The circumspection falls into place, yes. That is beneficial for my liberation, for my inspiration, for developing wisdom and understanding. And it's free. Yes. Okay. And so then you say, yes, I'll attend that. And so, this is how mindfulness and circumspection work together. It's assessing what is necessary and important. So I've actually spoken longer than I initially intended. So what I'll do now is maybe open up. I don't know how long I'm supposed to go. No one's told me anything yet. But I'll maybe open up to some questions. But I will sort of maybe finish by saying that you have this centre here. I did sort of make the comment that it's free, but actually it's not free. It costs money to have the electricity on and the air conditioning on, and to have this nice facility here set up. So I hope all of you are supporting and encouraging, maybe with your finance, your help, your time, and this all belongs to all of you. And it needs community to support it. It needs your help and your assistance, and to take part. And look at it this way, is that this, whatever you do that as an offering to the Buddha. So if you come and maybe take a cloth and wipe the shrine down, or clean the floor, put the pillows away, clean up, maybe wash some kind of cups and saucers or whatever, see that as an offering to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, that you're using your time and effort as a way of making merit, good actions, good karma, and supporting the Buddhist community. When I first came across Buddhism in Adelaide, it was about 45 years ago, they had a room about half this size, which we used to meet in. And in Adelaide at that time, when I went to the Buddhist Society, there were 6 people. I was number 6. That was the whole of Buddhism in Adelaide at that time. And so we used to make sure that we'd never travel home in the same car together, in case, like the royal family in England, in case that had a car accident, wiped out Buddhism in South Australia. Yes, so we'd have to go separate vehicles, to protect Buddhism. And so fortunately you have a bigger number, but you all need to support and look after and help each other. And it's lovely to be here, and thank you. And if you have any questions, you can maybe I don't know if there's a microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you can't hear, speak up a bit loudly. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn, for the talk. Shall we rejoice? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We open the floor for questions, and I already have one in my hand. Dear Ajahn, what is the difference between heart and mind? Thank you.
Heart and mind. It's very interesting in Buddhism. The Buddha used the word citta, and when we translate that into English, it's we actually used a number of different words. He used citta, mano, which is mental thoughts, and you've got mind, and so but it's often translated when we talk about citta as heart mind. Sometimes heart, which is the feeling side and the emotions, and then sometimes the mind, because it's the thinking. But what it really means is, when people ask, for example, Ajahn Chah, what is the citta? What is this heart-mind thing we're talking about? he says it's not a thing, it's an action. It's an action of feeling, it's an action of thought, it's an action of perception, it's an action of recollection. It's a process. So it's not really something you can say is an object, or it's in a location of the brain or the heart, the physical heart, but it is this, when the mind or even the feelings in the heart are working, are operating. For example, if you fear, for example, that's more of an emotional feeling, isn't it, rather than a mental, intellectual feeling. You can have the intellectual reasons of why you're afraid. For example, you're afraid of heights or something like that, or afraid of aircrafts. But there's emotional, physical reaction of perspiring, for example, or shaking through fear. And so this term heart-mind is often used together to describe the kind of interrelationship between the intellectual fear that's going on and knowing that you're afraid, and the emotional reaction of the fear, which is the feelings. And so there is this sort of process that's happening together. So it's actually the processes. And a good example of that is okay, it's the software of life, yes, compared to the hardware. The hardware is the rupa, the physical body. Yes, you take a computer and break it up. You're looking at the hardware, but you've also a computer without software going in, and it's completely useless. The software that you put in is like the heart-mind. It's how it's been programmed and how you've been programmed. So we've all actually been programmed according to our karma. Yes, the karma we've done in past lives. So you obviously have very good programming because you've got very good karma to be here. Yes, so the monks have got very good karma to be a Buddhist monk in this lifetime, at this day, at this age, to actually come across the Buddhist teachings and then make a commitment. It's obviously not come from just this lifetime. I mean, Ajahn Karuniko and myself weren't born a Buddhist, didn't know anything about Buddhism before we came across the Buddhist teachings and later in life, yet we saw the benefits of that. So that shows that it's not just from this lifetime, it's been a long conditioning of processes of good input, good software has been put into that chitta, that mind. And so we've made these decisions to kind of walk this path. And also you have created good karma in the past, to have this good association with noble people, to come together, to want to practice, to want to grow, to want to develop. And so that's, you're putting the input. And this very process that we're doing tonight is part of that conditioning of the mind, instilling wholesome thoughts in the mind, instilling awareness in the mind for our liberation in the future. It is a conditioned process, the mind. So the mind is something that acts, but it also is something that receives. It gets conditioned as well. Chitta. So it's really that both those processes. It's acting, expressing, knowing, understanding, feeling, but it's also receiving as well, conditioning. Yes?
I know if your monastery or what Patana wants is open for lay people to actually stay and practice.
Let me repeat the question so that people can hear.
Everyone can hear. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat the question? She'll pass you the mic.
Yeah, I'm just asking whether Ajahns monastery, Wat Ratanawan, is actually open for lay people to actually stay and practice, because some years ago I know they were still building up. Not much is there, but I think lots of things have changed since then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The Ratanawan has sort of grown over the years, and now we do have visitors. People have come from overseas and stayed. Normally we're open for receiving small groups. we do have the sort of ceremonies like the Katina ceremony. We recently had a group from Singapore and Malaysia. There was 50 people came, but they sort of had to stay outside of the monastery. That's far too big a group for us to accommodate comfortably. But if it's a small group of 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 laymen we can receive, 3 or 4 ladies we can receive quite easily most of the time. Usually on bigger days, like if it's a Wisaka ceremony, then it's full. It's not a good time to to have a group. But if want a quiet time, other times of the year they can. But I would say that what Ratanawan is very isolated. It's if you're afraid of the dark, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're afraid of elephants, wild elephants, I wouldn't recommend it. Afraid of wild gur, gur, yes, cattle. I don't know what they're called in Singapore. In Malay they've got a different name. Gur. Yeah, Krating. They're the largest wild cattle in the world. In Malaysia they have them. They're big black and white legs, and they come in herds. And we have bears. We have so there's a lot of wild animals because we're right next to the national park. So some people have come and they're used to Singapore, and they're not used to living in the jungle. And so you kind of do have to make an adjustment. And I had some people come to me from Singapore, and they stayed one night, and they said, "I can't stay." And I said, "Why?" "There's no sound of traffic." And so they couldn't sleep. They just were so used to hearing the sound of cars, they couldn't sleep. And there's just the sound of animals at night. And we do have a lot of wild animals. So it's more of a place for people who can practice by themselves. So even if they come as a group, there won't be sort of a lot of group meetings because, for example, we do have wild elephants that we've actually had to stop the monks gathering together at times because the elephants have come down and stand outside the meditation hall. And at the end of the meeting, the monks can't go back to their huts because of the wild elephants. It's a bit dangerous in those cases. So usually what we do is if sometimes the animals are coming out, we will say, people practice in their huts by themselves. So if someone's completely new to, say, living in the forest or completely new to practicing alone, and they still need the support of a group to come to sit together, chant together, it's not the best place. Not the best place because it's sort of like being thrown in the deep end of a swimming pool. It's more suitable for people who can meditate by themselves and are used to that and can do their own practice and maybe just need a quiet environment to help support that. So
I'm asking that because do I need a mic?
You can speak loudly. You seem to have a strong voice.
Yeah, because I'm asking that because I've been to Ajahn Ganha's monastery.
Okay, just up the road.
I just went down, so I thought if it's open, then it would be a nice
Yes.
to drop by. But I'm not sure whether to go right into the guest monk or something like that.
Yes, you can send a message. Usually you'll find that Ajahn Ganha's is very different from. You've been to Ratanawan, have you? Yes. It's very different because it's a very big monastery, very developed, lots of people and lots of communal activities. Our monastery is more secluded, isolated. The buildings are a long way away, and there's more wild animals for some reason that comes through our area than his. So that Ajahn Ganha is a very good place for people who are new to practice and need to do communal practice, and it's very comfortable and convenient. We're a bit sort of more for the rough and rugged. Okay.
I think we have a question at the back. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Nongpo. I have a question related to your talk tonight. You mentioned a lot of terms like sustained attention and rupture and all that. So this seems to be means of overcoming the hindrance of meditation. So I want to ask you whether these are related or they're just coincidental.
No, they're definitely related. Yes.
So you got the
Definitely
vichara,
related.
vitara, and the piti, sukha, and all
Yes,
that.
right. So you know, like if we go on, this is a big area, another talk, maybe for another occasion. But if we go on from right mindfulness to right concentration, what's the first steps of right concentration? We talk vichan piti sukh. So it's vitaka, yes, vitaka. I'm forgetting my English. I'm saying it in Thai. Vitaka, vichara, piti sukha, ekigata. Yes. So and those 5 things are the qualities of the first level of jhana. Okay. And so when the mind becomes absolutely concentrated, you're focused on each individual breath coming in and coming out, and there's blissful attention to that, then the mind unifies with that breath. It touches onto the breath, knows the breath, and then automatically stays with the breath until the knower, the mind, and the object become one. And you have qualities of mind of vitaka. Vitaka is lifting the attention, lifting the mind's attention to this object, lifting it up, lifting the mind up. Yes? And vichara is sustaining it on this object. And the piti is a joyous interest in this object. Yes? And the sukha is the delight that arises from that knowing of the object and staying with the object. And the equanimity is just this balanced, relaxed ease of being with this one thing in the present moment. And so that's an equal opposite for the 5 hindrances. So the vitaka, the lifting the mind to the object, what does that do? It overcomes sloth and torpor. So if you're getting dull and drowsy, it's because you're not placing your mind on a meditation object. You're not putting the energy to lift the mind up and say, where am I breathing? Is the breath short or long? You haven't got that joyous interest and placing the mind, lifting the mind up. When you've got sloth and torpor, you just want to turn off, don't want to know anything, just want to go to sleep, turn the lights out. Yes? It's the hindrance of sloth and torpor is 2 qualities. It is the relaxed quality of the mind, the body. When the body's tired, you can feel exhausted. That's a physical thing. You've worked too hard or didn't get any sleep, therefore you're physically tired. But the torpor is that inability to the mind to want to pay attention. The mind that just doesn't want to know, wants to turn off. I couldn't be bothered, I'm not interested. I just want it all to shut down. And that's where the sloth and torpor, the torpor is the mental attitude. So the vitaka is where you're bringing the object up, applying it, bringing the attention of the mind. This is the attention, this is the object, the breath. You're placing the mind on the breath, placing the mind on the in-breath, placing the mind on the out-breath, placing there. The vitara is, once you've placed it there, you sustain it there. The example that often is given in the discourses in the Visuddhimagga, for example, is like you pick up a mirror. The picking up of the mirror is the vitaka, lifting up to the meditation object. The vichara is like polishing the mirror. You've got a cloth and you're rubbing that mirror, making it brighter and shinier so you can see into the mirror. So here we're keeping the attention on it. And the vichara, what's vichara overcome? Doubt, yes. It comes over doubt, because when you've sustained your mind on something wholesome, then you don't have any doubts what you should be doing. This is right, this is correct. Yes? And then we've got, then we've got piti and sukha and ekagata. What do the piti overcome? Ill will, that's right. That's right. So if you've got ill will in the mind, then it's directly overcome by piti, this joy, this joyous rapture in the interest in the object. And then sukha. Yes. If you're a restless person, you know, you're kind of bored. Boredom and restlessness go together. When you're bored, then you become restless. Yes? If you're a very restless person, what you're lacking in life is happiness, sukha, in the present moment. You're thinking that happiness is in a future time, in a different place, with a different person, different situation. That will lead to restlessness. A different job, a better employer, a higher wage, yes, a different country. That will lead to restlessness. When we have rapture and happiness in particular, when we're happy, we can, you know, if we're happy here right at the moment, we don't want to get up and leave. Yes? If I'm really happy, then I'm enjoying this moment, and I can stay with this moment for a long period of time. The lack of happiness leads to restlessness. So if you want to overcome a restless mind, you try to bring up something joyous and pleasurable into the mind. But it has to be wholesome pleasure. So, for example, a very skillful way, if you're unhappy, for example, and you're very restless, one of the skillful kind of things to do is develop mudita. You know what mudita is? It's rejoicing in other people's happiness. You're not happy, okay? Or rejoice in somebody else's happiness. And when it's, I call it the free surf. Yes? You're surfing on somebody else's wave. Okay? Yeah. You're seeing somebody else as happy and successful, and so you think, okay, I will develop joyous happiness that they're happy. As coming here on the way, we parked at a stoplight, and this Mercedes-Benz pulled up with flowers attached to it. Someone just got married. Yes, yes. And I can do two things. I think, oh, suffering. Yes. Or I can do. Anant and Karuniko reminded me this. The 3 rings of marriage. You know, 3 rings of marriage. Yes. Okay. The first ring they give you when you get married is the engagement ring. The second one is the wedding ring. Then the third one, suffering. Yes. Right. 3 rings of marriage. Okay. I've got another one for you. The first 3 years of marriage, the husband speaks and the wife listens. After that, the wife speaks and then the husband has to listen. And then after that, they both speak and neither listens. Then after that, they're both talking very loudly and the neighbours listen. And then after that, neither of them are talking and the monks have to listen. Okay. So, anyway, I'll get back to the other thing to do is the car pulls up, you see this is a married couple, okay, you can rejoice. May they be happy, may they be well. You know, may they rejoice in a successful life together. May they build paramitas. And if I do that, then what's that do? It brings this happiness within myself. You're seeing, you know, the joy in others. They're enjoying life. They're having success in life at this moment. You wish them well. And that overcomes any restlessness. So if you're a restless person, knowing that what's going on in the mind is you're looking for happiness, not in this present moment. You're not happy now. You're thinking happiness is somewhere else, some other time, some other person, some other situation. And you're trying to escape from the situation you're in. You're trying to get away instead of accepting, looking at this is the way it is. I could be at peace with this situation even if it's unpleasant. Okay? So that's, and then we've got equanimity, and that overcomes a one-pointedness of mind, one-pointedness of mind. It's sort of based in equanimity, but it's where the mind is totally focused on one thing, And that overcomes sensuality, sensual pleasures, where you're not actually looking for happiness in the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue. The body is content and full and unified in one point within itself. And so these 5 hindrances and the 5 qualities of jhanas are actually totally connected. That if you develop the qualities of vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekata, they will overcome and suppress the 5 hindrances. And that's what takes you in to the absorption of the object into the jhana. So very, very, very good question, and very important to know that, actually, because it's a practical thing you can do if you're finding that there's a strong hindrance. Oh, how do I overcome, say, drowsiness? Oh, you have to bring the mind up to the object. Bring the mind up to the object. That's how you overcome with it.
Thank you, Nongpo.
Maybe we have time for one last question. Yep. Hello, Ajahn.
Hello.
Thank you so much for a great talk. Actually, my question is about circumspection. Actually, as I practice, right, my self-awareness now is becoming stronger and stronger. But my circumspection, I always sometimes still choose the unwholesome.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yes, well, Ajahn Chah used to say you have to see the dangers. So look at the bank account. Yes, and yes, and so yeah, you have to, if we don't see the negatives in things, then we tend to think, oh, it doesn't matter, that's a small thing, and we repeat the same mistakes. So without seeing consequences, yes, then we tend to, kind of think that it's not so important in what we do. It's only when we really consider the consequences of our action that then we start to see, oh yes, this is creating a karma, a habit. And the more we kind of feed that habit, then the stronger it gets. And it's very hard then to break that habit. So, learning to reflect on consequences, learning to say no. There's actually 2 words in practice that we use all the time, but we're often using them in the wrong way. Those 2 important words? They're not Pali words, but they're very important words in Buddhism. You know what they are? Yes and no. And it exactly comes to your question. So when someone says, come, let's go shopping, you're saying yes. When you need to say no, okay? And that's we're using those words incorrectly at the wrong times, in the wrong circumstances, the wrong places. Yes? So, and that's part of the big issue. And it's learning to say no to the mind, to break the old habits. And that takes this sort of commitment, seeing the consequences of saying yes to what's not beneficial, and seeing the consequences of saying no to what is beneficial, because often we're saying no to what is beneficial too, when we should be saying yes. So, your alarm goes off in the morning, I'm going to get up and meditate. And the alarm goes off and, no. Sleep in a bit more, and yes, and instead of saying the alarm goes off, yes, I'm going to sleep in. No, I'm going to sit for an hour. Yes, I'll give up half an hour. No, you see the difference. It is this very, very small quality, but it's actually very important. And we're doing it all the time. And I pointed out to people that actually, I saw that with myself. Sometimes you're saying, this is yes to the wrong thing, when you need to be developing that strength of mind. And just that subtle attitude of practice became very, very powerful. I'll give you an example. when I was a very young novice, newly ordained, I just got to Thailand. I got malaria, and I had malaria. I ended up having malaria for about 5 years, repetitive malaria. And it makes, I don't know if you've had malaria, but it's very nauseous and very high fevers, vomiting and things like that, terrible feelings and terrible disease. And when I went to Wat Nana Chat, we would do these all-night sits on the Abosada days, on the one part. So it was, once a week, really, sit up all night. And one session, that was about 12 o'clock at night, and I started getting malaria fevers, just started coming on. And everyone's sitting there. There was no fans in those days. It was very hot, a lot of mosquitoes. And I just, incredible, terrible fevers and shaking and wanting to vomit. But I'm enduring this, but the mind is saying, no, I can't take this anymore. I just want to go back and lay down. There's no way I'm going to sit through the night. And the mind is saying no all the time. It's going, no, just go back and sleep. But of course, I was reluctant to do that because everyone else is sitting there. And then I heard this, this nagging in the mind. I can't take it anymore. That's enough. Just go back and lay down. And I started listening to that, and I asked myself, where's that voice coming from? And who is that voice? I'm assuming it's me. But it's not. It's just a conditioned phenomena according to Buddhism. Why don't I just flip that and start to say the total opposite in my mind? Because the mind was saying, I can't take this anymore. Why don't I say, this mind has the potential of patient endurance as big as the ocean. Just make up a phrase. Okay? And why is that more untrue? This mind has the capability of, infinite patience like the ocean. Why is that less true than, no, I can't take this anymore? It's just thoughts. One I'm taking as my real self. I can't take this anymore because I don't like the pain. Why can I say, this is just as real? This mind has infinite patience, and I can endure whatever arises, like the ocean. And so I started repeating that over in my mind, in place of, I can't take this anymore. And the mind just went into deep peace. And by the end, I sat there until well after 3 a.m, and then they rang the bell for chanting, and I didn't want to stop meditating. And that was when I started to see, as this novice, this thing of you're saying no often at the wrong times when you should be saying yes. And that's a very kind of interesting, very simple practice which we're often getting caught out on. Is you're saying yes to shopping when you should be saying no. Yeah? And saying no to sitting meditation for 3 hours at night is when you should say yes. Okay? Does that help? Very good, thank you.